Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Avani Ratan and I welcome you all to today's lecture on social psychology. To start with, imagine you're alone in your room making a decision to dye your hair blue. Nobody asked you to. So are you really alone in that choice? You might realize that Instagram trends, peer norms, cultural beauty ideas, and even job market pressures are covertly sitting in that room with you. So even when you're alone, we are never truly alone. So that is what social psychology is all about. So let's take into account two scenarios. In scenario A, an old man trips in public. You feel awkward and you walk away. In scenario B, the same man trips, but people around you rush to help. You jump in too. Now, what has changed? Was it your personality or was it the presence of others? So, this grounds the definition that social psychology studies how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by others, real or imagined. So, social psychology recognizes that humans are fundamentally social beings. So, even seemingly individual decisions are influenced by others, whether they are physically present or not. So, what can be the examples here? Protesting a climate change, following the COVID-19 healthline guidelines, helping the refugees, avoiding texting while driving, recycling, and energy conservation. These are the few examples of social behaviors. Discussing the power of social connections. Let's look at what research has to say. So, the Harvard study of adult development, which is ongoing since 1938, it says that happy social relationships have more impact on health than money or fame. Right? The COVID-19 impact, the social isolation, it led to increased anxiety and depression, especially in children and adolescents. So here, social isolation, it led to the increase in anxiety and depression. Coming to digital connections, so the number of Facebook friends, it predicts life satisfaction among college students. So here, what are we even looking at? Social contact is a central aspect of our life, right? So why is social psychology even important? Because social contact is the very key or a central aspect of our life. In a very basic sense, it helps us define who we are and it also helps us define the quality of our existence. So these are the two definitions of social psychology that we would look at. But even before we delve into that, what social psychology is and what it is not. So, social psychology is the scientific field that seeks to understand the nature and the causes of individual behavior. Right? It also looks at the feelings and the thoughts in social situations. Or the another definition is that social psychology, it investigates how our thoughts, feelings and actions are influenced by the social environment. So what is constituted in our social environment? Other people, their thoughts and our thoughts about them, right? Now, social psychology is scientific in nature. So many people think that science only applies to chemistry, physics, or biology. However, science refers to two things: A set of values, and B, methods that can study any topic, right? So here, the core scientific values in social psychology is accuracy. Then we would talk about objectivity. Then we would look at skepticism and also open-mindedness. So let's start with what is accuracy. So, gathering information in a careful, precise, and error-free manner. Here, we are looking at collecting information in a careful, precise, and error-free manner. What does it mean? That maybe casual people watching lacks precision and replicability, right? If you're just casually observing people around you, it might lack precision and you may not be able to replicate the same another time. So here the accuracy is compromised. Okay. So we are not actually being careful or precise, or this is not an error-free manner. Hence the accuracy is compromised. So casually watching people is not what accuracy is all about. Secondly, objectivity. So obtaining the information free from bias is objectivity. So different observers should reach similar conclusions. That is objectivity, right? So here, different observers should reach similar conclusions. That is objectivity. Moving on to skepticism. So, accepting the findings only after repeated verification. So, you will here accept the findings only after repeated verification. So, there is importance of replication in research. Then we talk about open-mindedness, the willingness to change the views when evidence contradicts them. That is open-mindedness. So for an example, research has challenged assumptions about happiness, group influence, and unconscious processes. So whenever it has challenged those assumptions which are contradicting to them, the willingness to change views and the willingness to accept new views would be open-mindedness, right? Now, the question is, why not rely on common sense? Why do we even need science in social psychology? So the first problem is there is contradictory folk wisdom that is already present, right? So how there is contradictory folk wisdom? What could be the examples? One which says that absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? You might have all heard of it. And second is out of sight, out of mind. So the folk wisdom which is already present is already contradictory in nature, right? Sometimes you might have also heard about two heads are better than one versus three monks have no water to drink. So all of this folk wisdom is already contradictory in nature. That's why one needs science in social psychology. So if all of these three examples can be true, that absence makes the heart grow fonder versus out of sight, out of mind, or two heads are better than one versus three monks have no water to drink. If both of these statements are true, then how do we know which one applies, right? So here enters social psychology, which is a myth buster of your mental shortcuts, right? Now, the second problem is cognitive biases. What are cognitive biases? So, the first one that we are going to here discuss would be a planning fallacy. So, we consistently underestimate how long our tasks will take, right? So, think about your last major project. Did it take you longer than you initially estimated? So, that is known as planning fallacy, right? So, here when we discuss about cognitive biases, that is the first one. Now, social psychology, it focuses on individual behavior. So, social psychology, it studies how social factors affect individuals, not societies as a whole. So, how groups influence individual behavior? or how culture becomes internalized and it affects individual preferences, or how emotions and moods affect individual decisions, right? So let's just take a small example here where teachers from a collectivistic culture. So, what could be the example of a collectivistic culture? Maybe Singapore, maybe Hong Kong, versus individualistic cultures, which is USA. How do they attribute to student academic failure differently, right? So, social psychology, it seeks to understand these causes. How does it seek to understand these causes? That social psychology, it studies 5 major category of factors which influence social behavior. The first is actions and